question to do with chi-squared of independence. The question has come from Revision Village, and I have never seen this question before, so we're going to be working through this together live. I am going to zoom in so we can see the question, and you can start doing it on your calculator. So it's talking about people selecting their preferred streaming service, and the information is in a matrix below. As soon as you see a matrix, you know you're going to have to start entering it into the matrix. This matrix is quite big. It's 4 by 4. Normally you wouldn't have a matrix so large in the exam as this, but let's start entering the data. You'll probably notice that there's some missing information, but we're going to sort that out in a moment. The first thing you need to do is you need to go onto the matrix button, and we're going to go across to edit. We're going to go on to A. I'd recommend you follow exactly what I'm doing and try and do it at my speed. We're going to do 4 by 4 matrix, then we're going to start putting in the information. So the information is as follows.
So you ignore the totals?
I ignore the totals. That's a very good observation. Well done. So with these questions, you always ignore the totals, but the totals is useful because in a moment we are going to see there is an A in the matrix, which means you need to substitute it with a different number by using the totals. So we're getting up to that A. So we've got 30 plus 32 is 62, plus 23, which is going to be 62 plus 23 is going to be 62 plus 23, 85, and then that's clearly going to be 15 because they all add up to 100. That's quite an unusual thing to do in the exam. You don't normally have to find missing values, but that's what I call a common sense question. You need very basic maths to be able to do that. Then I would quickly scan to see if they look correct. They look correct to me, and then we're going to start doing the question. So the question says, find the value of A. We've already done that. So the value of A is 15. We've done that because we've done 30 plus 32 plus 23. And then we've added those together and we've subtracted that from 100, which is 15. So if I was to write my answers on a document or on a whiteboard here, we would say that question A is going to be 15. It's 1 mark, so you don't actually need to put any workings out for that. Question B, determine the number of degrees of freedom for the test. Now, the degrees of freedom, there is a formula, but your calculator will actually work this out for you, so you don't really need this formula, but it's rows minus 1 times by columns minus 1. So that's basically how much manoeuvrability we have in the table. How many rows are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, ignoring the total row. So it's 4 minus 1, which is 3, and then 4 minus 1, which is 3. So there's going to be 9 degrees of freedom. But the calculator will work that out for you, which I'll show you in a moment. Then question C, use your graphic display calculator to find the chi-squared statistic. Please note it's chi, not chi. I often say it wrong. Then we're going to go on to the stat menu. We're going to go across to tests. We've done so far 2 sample t-tests. We need to go over a t-test, just 1 sample t-test. And today we're doing chi-squared test of independence. So you select C for chi-squared test of independence, and in a future lesson we'll do D, which is chi-squared goodness of fit, which is not what we're doing today. You press enter and you can see the degrees of freedom is 9, so you didn't even need to know that formula. And then the chi-squared statistic is 21.2, rounded to 2 decimal places. 3 significant figures, or 1 decimal place, 21.2, because the 1 rounds up to a 2. Then it says, state the conclusion for the test, justify your answer. So there's different ways you can conclude the test. There's 2 ways altogether. So first of all, the conclusion of the test could be to do with P. Now we do and use P quite a lot for the t-tests. So first of all, we're going to compare what P is like in comparison to the significance level of 0.05. We're writing 5% as a decimal. So we write 0.05, and then we're going to write down what our P is. And if we have a look at this, P is 0.0119. 0.0119. Note I've written 3 significant figures. A lot of people would just write 0.01. That is not 3 significant figures. You can see that P is small. So P is small. We reject the null hypothesis. We reject HO. So the conclusion of that test would be as follows. Reject HO. So if we're rejecting HO, this means they're not independent, they are dependent. There's another way you can conclude the test as well, which is comparing the critical and the calculated value. There we go. The critical value is 16.9. So again, to keep this consistent with what I did on the whiteboard, we are going to put 16.9 on the right-hand side, which is the given number, and then we're going to compare it with the number which was given in the question, which is the chi-squared statistic, which was given on the calculator. So we're going to compare this number, which is 21.2, and we said if it's the opposite way round, which it is, so if we've got the calculated value is bigger than the one given in the question, then we also reject HO, because we've got two different inequalities, but they both point to the fact that we're rejecting HO. And the reason why is because there's two facts we need to learn. In order to reject HO, we've either got the P is smaller than the critical value, or we have got the X squared or the chi-squared calc is bigger than the one which is given in the question, which is called the chi-squared crit. Again, we've talked about this on the board. This is something you must memorize. If it's the opposite way round, rather than rejecting HO, we accept HO. So in the exam, you would just have to write these are dependent, because we're rejecting HO, which is they are independent.